Fractions on a Number Line by Mrs. Morse. Alright, so we're used to seeing fractions on different models, such as circles or on rectangles, where we have our whole piece, whether it's a whole circle or one whole rectangle, split into the even parts to make the different fraction pieces. Remember, a fraction is a piece or a part of the whole amount, not the whole thing. So here with our halves, we have two equal pieces to make the whole rectangle. So each one of these pieces is 1/2. Here's our thirds, our fourths, our fifths, etc., etc. But today we're going to take a look at how fractions will look on a number line. Now a regular number line that we're used to seeing counts by whole numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. It can go higher than 14. It can even go lower than 0 into the negatives, such as -1, -2, -3, etc. However, I don't see any fractions on this number line here. Well, the fraction will come in between the whole number. So we need to look in between 0 and 1, and our fractions will be there. In between numbers 4 and 5, and we'll see the fractions inside of those whole numbers. So here's an example here. Here I have my number line, 1 to 7. Each up here are my whole numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. However, we now have the fraction pieces inside of our whole numbers. So if we look here, in between 0 and 1, I have 1, 2 pieces now. This means that I am now going to be counting by halves on my number line here. So again, here's my 1 equal piece and 2 equal pieces here. This means each one of these is a half. If I look down here at my models before, at my halves, you can see here's my rectangle. It has been split into 2 equal pieces here for the halves. Now that's going to look very similar here up on the number line. So if this was my rectangle here, splitting it in half would create that 2 equal pieces. So can you see where that rectangle would fit sort of on the number line here? So this is where the halves appear on a number line. If we were to continue the pattern, between 1 and 2, there are 2 equal pieces again here. So here is another half piece. However, it's not just a half, because it's between 1 and 2, this place is 1 and a half. If you continue the pattern between 2 and 3, you would have 2 and a half, and etc., etc. So each of these would be marking half pieces. So if I had a question that asked me, what would be the name of the place on my number line here? Because there are 2 equal pieces in between each of these whole numbers, we are counting by halves. And because I am between the number 4 and the number 5 on my number line, this place is 4 and a half. Sometimes number lines will have other types of fractions here. To identify what the fraction is, you first need to look and see how many equal parts are in between the whole numbers. So here's 0, and here's my 1 whole piece. 2 whole, 3 wholes. So in between here, these are your fractional parts. So let's take a look here. How many equal parts am I going to have for my fraction names? So here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I have 4 equal pieces between 0 and 1. If I look down here on my chart here, I'm going to be dealing with fourths. Here is my rectangle that has been divided into fourths. So if you were keeping track as to what it looked like on a rectangle, here would be my fourth pieces. So each one of these distances on my number line here is a fourth. Okay, so 1/4. If I'm counting from 0 to 1, this would be 1/4. This would be my 2nd fourth, or 2/4. This would be my 3rd fourth, or 3/4. And the 4th fourth makes me to have 1 whole piece here. So this number line is counting by fourths. Now if I were to look over here and say, how far is that on my number line? you need to see that you are in between 2 and 3 on your number line. So I know it's going to be at least 2, but what's my fraction piece here? So if I'm starting at the 2 here, I have 1/4, 2/4, and 3/4. So right here on my number line, I am at 2 and 3/4. Right. So let's continue on with some more examples. As you can see, the distance between 0 and 1 is getting longer, or the pieces are getting smaller. So in order to determine what our fraction name is here, what the fraction name of this piece right here, we need to first see how many equal parts there are in between 0 and 1. So let's count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Because this is 8 equal pieces, that means one of them, one of the pieces that I'm dealing with here, is an 8th piece. So this is 1/8. If I'm looking at this part here on my number line, I would count 1/8, 2/8, and 3/8. How about if I am right here on my number line? Now this one's kind of tricky because can you see where the number 2 is? The number 2 is actually not on this part of the number line. Let's see why. If I were to count, I'd say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I only have 6 spaces here on the rest of my number line before it cuts off. Well, that does not mean that these fractions are sixths. If you go back to this part, the distance between 0 and 1, there were 8 equal parts. So one of these parts is an 8th. This is true even after you go over a whole number. So even though we can't see where number 2 ends on this number line here, I am still counting by 8ths after 1. So this would be 1 and 1/8, 1 and 2/8, and 1 and 3/8. So sometimes you have only just a little bit of the information given to you to then find a piece beyond that on a number line. So always remember to check what is the fraction that you are counting by on your number line. Alright, how about these fractions? Can you count up your equal pieces between 0 and 1 to see what fraction you're counting by? Well, there are 1, 2, 3 equal parts between 0 and 1. That means each one of these is 1/3. So, what if I am here on my number line? Because I'm between 3 and 4, this number line, the spot on this number line is at 3, and one of those 3 equal pieces. So the fraction would be 3 and 1/3. So now we're dealing with thirds on our number line. Here, if you count the equal parts again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have 6 equal parts, so I am dealing with sixths. Now, to make the example just a little bit more challenging, this is our final example here. Here I have a number line. What would the name for this point on the number line be? Now, if you can see my number line here, I'm missing some information at the beginning. So can I start counting right here? Not really, because I don't know if my starting point right here is at 3 or where it is. So now, to find out what each one of my fractional pieces is, I need to find a whole number and the next whole number and figure out how many equal parts are in between each whole number. So now I'd say, well, here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. That means each one of these spaces here on your number line is a 4th. So going back to this point right here, I'm in between 5 and 6. So right now I'm at 5 and 1/4 and 2/4. 2/4. 5 and 2/4. Alright, this is the end of this video to show you how to find your fractions on a number line and how to identify what your fraction counting piece is.